So we were living in this apartment building that was built in 1908. So it's an old building. And we had one of those old school intercom systems where you turn the dial to the floor that you want. And then you could talk into it and they would hear you and then they could buzz you up or down. Well, we on the second floor and we would always hear these strange scratching sounds in the intercom system at night. Well, we stood there listening, obviously freaking out. And then we started hearing the footsteps again coming from the other side of the wall. And when we knocked on that door, somebody actually opened it and they were like, oh. My boyfriend and I both looked at each other. We were both kind of freaked out at this point. And then he said, I'll go check the rest of the apartment and you check the bedroom. Well, we turned onto the street that this apartment building was on, and as we passed the building, my mom slammed on the brakes and she turned to me and she was like, what the hell was that? And I was like, I don't know. And then she said, wait, you're not gonna tell me that you lived in that apartment building, were you? And I was like, yeah. And she was totally grossed up. She was like, no wonder you came home every weekend. You weren't hiding away in that apartment. You were hiding away from whatever the hell is in that apartment building. So we split up and we started checking everywhere. And we could not find any signs of forced entry anywhere. Everything was locked. Windows, doors, everything was locked. And there were no signs of forced entry. They were like a young couple and they said, no, we haven't heard anything. We just moved it. We don't know what's going on. But we were definitely not staying in that apartment after dark anymore. So we ended up leaving. We didn't even finish our leave. We just packed up and we left because we were so freaked out. Yeah, to this day, neither one of us will ever stay in that building again. We can't even drive past it without feeling like somebody's watching us. So we went back to our apartment, freaked out for a little bit, and then we decided that we should probably check the apartment to see if everything is okay. And as we were walking into the apartment, we noticed that the front door was open and it was propped open using a big block of wood. My boyfriend and I peed out of there and we ran downstairs. We didn't even bother to take the elevator. We ran downstairs and as soon as we got to the first floor, we started hearing these footsteps coming down the stairs, but we weren't on the second floor yet. We were still on the first floor. We started hearing the footsteps coming down the stairs, and then they stopped. We couldn't figure out what it was. Sometimes we would even hear chains dragging metal moans. It sounded like somebody was dragging themselves up the fire escape outside our window and then going into the apartment above us. Now, we knew the apartment above us was empty because we could see through the window into that apartment and it was completely empty. There were no signs of forced entry. The door was always locked. We never heard anybody come in or go out. All the pipes are old and there's nothing down there. And we were just kind of standing there talking about how weird that was when all of a sudden we heard these really loud thumping sounds like somebody was dropping a heavy bag or something over and over again. And then it stopped. And then we started hearing what sounded like whispers. But it wasn't coming from the intercom. It was coming from right behind the wall. We started hearing these whispers and then they got louder and they were getting closer and closer. And then we started hearing what sounded like heavy footsteps getting closer and closer. And we lived there for about 6 months before we finally got fed up with the noise and decided to check it out. So my boyfriend went down to the basement to see if he could find where the noise was coming from. And while he was down there, I called up the apartment above us just to see if anybody was home. And when I did, I started hearing these same noises that we had been hearing at night. Chains dragging and then heavy footsteps. And then I could have sworn I heard somebody moan. Well, my boyfriend came back up and said, hey, I went down there. And then all of a sudden, the wall behind us started to shake and then it stopped. So we went back upstairs and we checked the apartment next door to us to see if maybe somebody was messing around, trying to be a little prankster. The weird thing was, we definitely locked the door when we left, and we never kept anything in the door frame to keep it open. We ended up calling the police, and they came out and did an investigation, and they found nothing. One time, my mom was driving me home from college, and we were like, oh, let's take a shortcut through downtown and avoid traffic.